Hello, everybody. Welcome to Writers with Purpose. I'm your host, Melvese from Written Words Publishing. At Written Words Publishing, we envision a world where every storyteller, regardless of their background, has the opportunity to share their voice, shape narratives, and impact the world through the written word. So if you value powerful storytelling, do me a favor, like this video, follow this channel, this page, whatever platform you're watching on, subscribe to this channel, whatever platform you're watching on, and share this broadcast, okay? Because somebody out there wants to hear about this story. We explore all genres here at Writers with Purpose, and tonight we're digging into sci-fi. Yes, our guest story takes us into a chilling alternate history where World War I collides with an alien invasion. In Shadows of the Past, the Great War of the Worlds, the Martians have returned, stranger, adapted, and armed with devastating technology. From the trenches of Europe to the streets of New York, humanity faces a terrifying question. Can we stop the invasion? Especially when some humans are helping the enemy. Whoa. Okay, y'all. Let's welcome the author behind this epic sci-fi thriller. It's a series, y'all. Let's welcome Eric Goebelbecker to the stage with us today. Did I get it right, Eric?
Yes, you did. Yes.
All right. Thank you for joining us here on Writers with Purpose. Tell us something about yourself and tell us the purpose behind writing Shadows of the Past.
Name's Eric Goebelbecker. Sort of retired computer programmer, still active dog trainer, and lifetime science fiction fan. I was originally intending to write about my grandfather. My grandfather was drafted into the German army for World War I. 1914 was, I forgot when he was originally drafted. But he was drafted as a very young kid, the youngest of like four boys. The middle of like four boys. And he ended up on the Battle of the Somme, which Americans don't know as much about the Battle of the Somme. It doesn't loom as large as it does for British and Germans, where on the first day of the Somme, the British lost about 60,000 men.
Wow.
That's like almost the strength of their infantry early in the war. If you are a fan of Downton Abbey, you are familiar with the Battle of the Somme, though, because they actually did an episode on it. And after surviving that battle, where I'm going to back up a little bit, the British broke through at one point in the German lines. They broke it one section, Mametz Woods, which, that's where he was. That's where my grandfather was. And he ended up being labeled a hero, literally because he knew which way to run. He had laid out the wires for the telegraph and the lights in the trenches. And if you know anything about World War I, the trenches were kind of a maze, so that if you were breached, the enemy could just run over your men. He knew which way to lead his unit out and was credited with saving his unit. He was subsequently captured by the French, and actually I became familiar with this story when I was a kid. Martin Middlebrook actually came to Midland Park, New Jersey, and interviewed my grandfather when I was like a little kid. And I remember my grandfather crying, talking about the war and his experience. He ended up finally released by the French, came back to his village, and that was roughly 1928 that our tiny little one-horse town became very active in what ended up later on being called the National Socialist Party. You might have heard of them, the Nazis. And he was having none of that. And finally, his father had to smuggle him out of the town because he had caused so much trouble. And that's how he ended up in New York City. My father came over 6 months later in diapers with his brother and sister and my grandmother. So he had kind of an interesting life. And I was doing some research on that and got to a point where I'm like, this is too much. This can't be the first book I write.
Mm.
I just didn't know what to write about, but I was always fascinated with the Somme going back to a kid. Most older Gen X, younger boomers like me were into World War II. I was a weirdo. I was into World War I. And I one day had the idea of, wouldn't it be cool if the Martians showed up at the Somme? And that turned into the idea for the first book, Shadows of the Past. And I kind of was playing with this idea. This was during COVID when we all had way too much free time. If you look at H.G. Wells, the original book that all the movies that we've seen, like with Tom Cruise, are based on, it's roughly 1894, 95. The Martians show up, they tear up everything, and then they drop dead on the battlefield from the common cold.
Hmm.
What happened to all those weapons? Like, you have wonderful people like the Kaiser in Germany and Tsar Nicholas in Russia, and even later on Teddy Roosevelt in America with heat rays and chemical weapons and all that. They were kind of violent guys. What would the world have looked at? And I kind of pictured the Martian invasion as their 9/11. If you think about the mess we're in right now, you can track a lot of it back to 9/11, right? Things got kind of worse. If you're old enough to remember, things got kind of bad. What happens if there's this invasion in 1894? What does the world look like? And I kind of extrapolated that into who would our president have been? What would America have looked like? What would Germany have looked like? And that's a lot of what Shadows of the Past is set in, is looking back 20 years later after something like 9/11, what does the world look like? Funny enough, when I was working on this, I was in a hurry because I thought things would go back to normal here. Yeah. Now I could probably get another 9 books out of this and we'd still be nuts. So yeah, the first book is, like you said earlier, World War I collides with the Martian invasion. Meanwhile, over in America, there are Martian sympathizers that are causing all kinds of fun over here. I got to set Coney Island on fire with a bomb. I got to have a radio transmitter hidden in what was the tallest building in New York City back then, which actually was the MetLife Tower.
Okay.
And stuff like that. And people in New York would definitely appreciate some of this. People were familiar with the World War I battlefields. I have lots of call outs to battles in the original war. But yeah, it's the best science fiction is about real life. And I tried to write a book about real life.
Yeah, that's awesome, and blending the sci-fi with the history. That's a pretty unique idea, because usually sci-fi stories that take place in the present or they take place in the future. Not too often you see a sci-fi story that took place in the past. That was a unique spin. Tell us about some of the characters in your book. Like, who is your favorite character? Which character do you dislike?
Oh, dislike. So my favorite character is going to be in the first book, and he's in the second book too. Emil Zimmerman. My grandfather's first name was Emil, and my grandmother's maiden name was Zimmerman. So it's a very thinly veiled attempt to write how I pictured my grandfather in his late teens and early 20s. One of the famous quotes from my grandmother was, he couldn't keep his mouth shut. So even after they came back to the States, if you know any history of Nazism in America, you might have heard of the Bund. The Bund was the Nazi party in New York City during World War II. He got his butt kicked by them a couple times because he just could not keep his mouth shut. So Emil is a very much an upstart troublemaker in the German army. I was in the American Army for 8 years, and I was an upstart troublemaker too. So there might be a little bit of me in there. Funny enough, the point of view character in the U.S., James Brogan, is a character I love to hate. He's kind of whiny, and it takes him way too long in the book to decide to do the right thing. But of course, some people love that about a character. So I decided, if I'm going to have Emil be a hothead that's always doing the right thing, I need to have a counterpart for him that doesn't. I will say the third book in the series isn't nice to him. That's not even a spoiler. It's not that he doesn't die, but he doesn't look good. But that would be one character that I'm not too much a fan of. And I'm trying to think of who else. In the second book, there's a character that's supposed to be an antagonist that by the end of the book, I end up doing a Star Trek and making him a good guy. Star Trek always makes the good villains, like the Klingons became our favorite characters, right? I kind of pulled that with him. I kind of forced him into doing the right thing.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Well, what advice would you give to writers who want to blend sci-fi and history the way that you did?
Do your homework and try to find other authors that do that. Harry Turtledove is an author that does a lot of alternate history. I think younger readers might find him old-fashioned, like he was big in the 80s and 90s. If you're around in the 80s, sci-fi and fantasy had a marvelous renaissance with paperbacks. And a lot of those books are being reissued now in hardcovers because we're old enough now that we have a lot of money and we'll pay too much for them. But Harry Turtledove was big then, and it's kind of an older style of writing, but he did a lot of alternate history. And when you're writing for that crew, you need to have your ducks in a row. I spent a lot of time, like I said, researching, like picking up books like this. Very dry read, the British are. But of knowing what happens and try to call out factors in there. But I think the other thing is don't be afraid to have fun and really mess things up. For crying out loud, if aliens landed here in 1894, tore everything up and dropped dead, the world would be a little bit different, right? So I kind of played around with what happened with the technology and who I had elected president, whose name is slipping me right now. Why can I not remember the guy who prosecuted the Scopes monkey trial? It'll come to me. If somebody's in the chat, they're probably screaming it right now. But oh, come on. Cars would have been different if, by then. William Jennings Bryan. There you go. William Jennings Bryan. If you know anything about William Jennings Bryan, he ran for president a couple times. He kept losing. The way he talked and the way he talked about religion might remind you of somebody that we have around here today. And I have to say, early on, I thought I was stretching the truth, and
it turns out
I'm not going to say too much, but here we are. And I had the idea of a national police force where, the FBI would have grown differently than it did in America. For a very long time, they were kind of not powerful. Now, here you are, although he actually recruited another police force to do that stuff. But I think my advice for new writers would be just write. So I wanted to be a writer in high school, and I really didn't get started, for a few decades while my sister finished 60 novels. And I kept waiting for the right time. The right time is now. Start writing.
Yes.
And don't be just write for yourself. Find some friends to read it for you and do that. We're blessed with a nascent independent publishing industry now, where you can really set a path for yourself. You don't have to wait to be chosen. Don't wait to be invited. Crash.
And not only that, you there's no hold bars, no holds barred when you doing it yourself. You don't have to worry about somebody saying, "Oh, I don't like that. Take that out. Move this. Change the cover. Do this. Do that. Do the third." You get to be 100% in control. I think another great thing about writing sci-fi and fantasy is, you touch on reality, but you have the opportunity to create a whole nother world, and you can do whatever you want when you're writing sci-fi and fantasy. There are absolutely no barriers, and I think that is awesome. Nobody can look at it and be like, "Oh, well, that doesn't make sense. That wouldn't happen." Well, it would happen in this world over here. Right,
That's very true. It's and I your characters need to be grounded in reality, and you know, and I think it's got more to do with characters acting believably in the framework that you set up that makes it cool. You're right. In terms of, to me, I've always been into alternate history, and I've always been thinking about what if, and you know, I like reading. There's another really great author, S.M. Sterling, that does a lot of looking into the past and looking into the history that I appreciate. It's a pretty small, pretty niche part of the science fiction fantasy universe, but I've grown addicted to it, and it's an excuse to read history, which, you know, I think it was Malcolm Gladwell who came up with the term dadstalgia, that men hit an age somewhere around 45 or 50 where all of a sudden all they care about is history. And I was bitten with that bug. You know, and like I said, most of them gravitate toward World War II. I can't be the same. I have to be different. So the next book is about witch trials and witch burnings.
That's different. That's interesting. Well, we got some people that are watching now. Irvin says that your story is very interesting. He says it sounds like a good read, but we got a couple of questions for you here. Why do people always think of aliens as being hostile?
That's a really good question. I picked a guy who had already made that assumption. And I will confess, you know, the series is not done. I'm taking a break from it, but the idea of a friendly alien race coming along to help out, it's been done, but I like that idea. There was a series with the guy from ER that was about 5-6 years ago, Noah Wiley, Falling Skies. They actually did that, where in the second or third season, they had the friendly aliens show up to help fight the hostile aliens. I think that's a pretty good idea. One short answer, I'll take the cop-out English teacher answer. Your story has to have conflict. So you would still have to have a bad guy in there. I guess what you could do is have the aliens show up and have a group of people that are afraid of anything different and persecute them. Yeah, I think you could probably find some research for that. Some
find some research. We got another question here. So Thomas is watching. He says he's working on his own sci-fi novel series. Any advice about character development, which is kind of new to him?
I don't know if it's new.
Well, he's saying that the character development is new to him. Okay. Fiction. So
for your main character, Save the Cat is all you need. Look up Save the Cat outlining. It kind of draws a map for you through the arc of your story on how to develop a character. It was originally designed for screenplay, but it's been adapted to everything from novels to comic books to game development. People will use something like Save the Cat. If you're writing anything like fantasy or science fiction, you'll also hear of Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey, which, to be honest, watch the first Star Wars movies, and that is the hero's journey mapped out scene for scene. The other advice is use people in real life. Half the characters in especially the first 2 books in my series are guys I was in the army with. I even almost used the same names and just spelled them differently for a couple of them. But watch people. Go to the cafe, sit and be that creepy guy watching people. Ooh, I shouldn't have said that. But watch real people.
That's the truth. Somebody is always watching you. That's what we know right now. So there's nothing really creepy about it anymore. Maybe
just don't pull the phone out. Just take notes. But I mean, to me, people are characters. Real people are characters. That's who you watch. But I cannot say enough good things about Save the Cat. I was stuck writing the first book, and I found a story coach, and she sat down and spent the time with me to go over Save the Cat. And if you think your story is different and shouldn't follow a traditional framework, you're wrong. Sorry, because what'll happen is the readers will be upset. They expect things to happen, right? paging
That's
Jewish
true.
readers.
The readers are often looking for tropes, so they're
Yeah,
looking for a
they're looking for
story
the tropes. Yeah,
yeah, to follow a certain pattern. But
yep.
you know, on one hand, yeah, you want to go with what, you know, might be the norm, but on the other hand, you have to do something to make yourself stand out from the rest. Because the market is so saturated right now, you definitely have to have something different from what everybody else is doing. You have to stand out.
Well, no, that's really true. So when you're breaking the rules, you should know that you are, and you should know why.
That's great advice. When you're breaking the rules, know that you're breaking the rules and know why you're breaking the
Right.
rules. Yeah, because somebody is gonna question you.
Right. Well, also, I mean, like in the third book, which is the shortest,
Mhm.
Murder in Soft Words. I gotta hold up my book, right? I have to practice this.
Yeah.
I do take a couple of not U-turns, but a couple of different turnoffs toward the end of the story. But I had reasons for doing that, and that's, you know, like I said, know why in terms of I'm doing this in service of the story. I wanted this the lead in the Murder in Soft Words was a lead character in a supporting character in the first book, Shadows of the Past, and I wanted
Mhm.
to give her some more screen time.
Right.
But she very much wasn't a traditional action hero. So I did at a certain point have other people do things that in traditional story the main person would have done, because I wasn't going to have her suddenly put on a steel bikini and grab a sword and start killing people. So I had to, I had a reason to be different that made sense in terms of the plot and the story. That's what I'm trying to say. But you know, it's just like any other field. The guys who got here before us, they know what they're doing. You know what I mean? They know why they're doing it that way. They're not wrong, I guess you could say.
That's
Well, I
true.
will say, going back to that character development, I was
Mhm.
talking before about the '80s. What I love about the newer science fiction and the newer fantasy, is it's much more character focused than it was when I first came up. And I still, I even now, books I read in my not in my teens, in my 20s and 30s that I thought were awesome, I go back to now and I can't read them because the
Mm.
characters are so opaque.
Mm.
And that's what I do love about the newer stuff, is there's a lot more character development. The characters are a lot more believable and real and visible to me. But the stories still follow the same general beats as the books written 50 years ago. H.G. Wells, you can take his books and overlay the hero's journey on them, or Save the Cat.
Okay. All right.
Uh,
That's some great advice, Eric. Thank you for sharing that information out there, because we know there are some writers out there who are
yep.
going to be able to take that to the bank. So your book is a series. It's 3 books. Are they standalone, or does someone need to read them 1, 2, and 3, or can somebody pick up 3 and go to 1 and go to 2? What would you say?
You'd be better off reading them in order. They do stand alone in terms of, I do what the better series do in the first couple chapters. I do tell you what world you're in and what's going on, but they're also written in a way that um, there are characters in the second and third book that were supporting characters in the first book. And if you know a little bit more about them, you might get more about the story. What I did do very deliberately is each book has a different POV character,
Okay.
which might
That,
annoy some people, but that's what I
mm,
wanted to do, and I'm in charge.
yeah, you gotta do what you feel comfortable doing. Um, So Tom wants to know, do you ever research the competition when developing a new series? So Tom, when you're saying competition, are you saying like other books in the same genre? Because you know what, I don't believe that authors are in competition, because every story is so unique. And if someone is a fan of sci-fi, if someone is a fan of alternate history, that's what they like, and that's what they're going to read. And when they find authors that write in their favorite genre, those are the books that they are going to read. I don't look at other authors in your genre as your competition. I don't know, what do you think, Harry?
Competition. I mean, I would use competition to be ironic or funny. But I as a dedicated reader, I don't say I'm only buying one book this month. I say I need to get these upstairs before my wife notices that I bought them. But I do definitely read other authors constantly, and I do think you have to read. I do hear other authors saying I don't have time to read, and I find that, I don't want to say troubling, but hard to understand. I want somebody else's voice in my head while I'm writing, because I think it helps me make my voice better. When it comes to War of the Worlds sequels, definitely I've read quite a few other authors. There's a couple out there, and the one deliberate step I made is that the two most prominent that I found very deliberately wrote like Wells did in a late 19th century style. I made the decision to write in a much more modern style. Part of that was I didn't want to write like late 19th century, but part of it was I thought that might make my stories stand out when you compare it to some of those other authors. And their books are fantastic, and you can read them all, and it's just like reading, what Game of Thrones versus Brandon Sanderson versus Dragonlance, right? It's all kind of the same world, but different takes on worlds with elves and all that stuff. But I think it's crucial to read. I learn from other authors all the time. I'm reading V.E. Schwab right now. I hadn't read her for a long time, and just reading a few chapters of one of her books, I learned a couple things in how she presents stories. When I was writing the first book, N.K. Jemison's fifth season had just come out, and I read that, and it was phenomenal. I can't write in that kind of literary style. Give me another 50 years, but you should be reading. You definitely should be reading, and you should be going to movies and seeing how movies are structured.
Yeah,
we'll go see Project Hail Mary next week. I can't wait.
Yes,
Star Trek novels.
A lot of Star
Read Peter
Trek.
David.
Yes.
Find Peter David, the old stuff. His stuff's fantastic.
Yeah, the old stuff. Well, let's take a peek at your cover here. We have the cover for book one in your series. Tell us where we can go and purchase your books.
If you are already using something like Kindle or Kobo, they're in all the major ebook stores. There's a link that will take you to my eGoebel.com. I didn't make you type out Goebelbecker. You're welcome. /shadows will take you to a universal book link, it's called, where you can pick your favorite store. I do have my own online store if you want to buy direct from me in paperback or audio or ebook. And if you buy them from me, there's no copy protection, so you can put them on whatever device you want. And there are audio books of the first two books, Shadows of the Past and Clouds in the Future. I have not done the audio book for Murder in Soft Words yet, because it costs a lot of money to make an audio book. I use a professional narrator. I don't make people listen to my Jersey accent for 3 hours.
Okay, and then you don't make people listen to AI either. That's a thing now. A lot of people are using the AI audio book.
I'm a programmer, and I will take a strong stance against AI.
Yeah, I don't like that bland monotone where there's no emotion. Like, if you're gonna do all that, you may as well just read the book on the paper.
No, I found an author that had already done audiobooks of H.G. Wells books, and I liked his voice a lot. And my covers are done by actual artists, actual illustrators. I'm trying to not use AI. I want to indies have to stick together.
Yes. Yeah, I was going to ask you about your cover. How did you find your cover designer?
If I remember right, it was a long time ago. There's another author that I went to high school with. He's using I can't. When you get up to 62, names lose you. But another author recommended a company called Mibble Art, Miblart. They will very reasonably make covers for you. They make the audio covers. In the initial, for the first book, we went back and forth over the design of the alien crafts of the Walker, and they carried that through to the other things. And they're also in Ukraine, which was kind of a bonus to support a business in Ukraine. So I used them for all 3 books.
Okay, yeah, that's great. I've heard of them and referred a few people out to them also. So I was glad to see that, yeah, they are producing great work. So I've heard kind of mixed reports about them, but it's good to hear something really good about them. All right. Well, before we leave out of here, tell everybody where they can find you if they want to communicate with you or follow you on social media.
I use Goebelbecker or Eric Goebelbecker on Facebook. Goebelbecker, you'll find my Facebook page. The link tree was flashing by here. If you go to linktr.ee/Goebelbecker, you can find all my stuff. I'm only on Facebook, Instagram, and Blue Sky. I'm not the best social media citizen, I will say. However, if you do go to Linktree, you will find a sign up for my newsletter. I do a newsletter twice a month where I try to share what I've been reading or watching lately. And also, I get together with a lot of other indies where we'll do specials on our books and special sales and all that. If you sign up for my newsletter, you will get a free novella, which is a prequel to the first book. There's a character in the first book called Ben Johnson, and I tell his story of the original Martian invasion in 1894, which of course had to be in Grover's Mill, New Jersey, just like Orson Welles' famous radio program. And I had to fit in something. I had to get New Jersey some positive attention. We need it.
Yeah. Actually, Tom is from Jersey. Yeah, he says us Jersey people don't have accents.
I didn't think so until I met my wife in Germany, and she
yeah.
any of the other American guys. So yeah.
Yeah, it seems like anywhere you go somewhere else in the country, somebody can automatically tell where are you from. Are you from New York? Are you from Jersey? You don't hear it yourself, but other people could definitely hear it.
What accent? What exit?
All right. Well, thank you very much for being a guest on Writers with Purpose. It sounds like your book is a very interesting story, a nice blend, alternative history, mixed with, alien invasion. A very, very interesting story. If you're out there and you like history, you like sci-fi, I believe that you are going to enjoy Eric's series. So, we just want to thank everybody for watching, for everybody that participated. Thanks for coming with your questions. Those were some really good questions, and I hope that we were able to give you some answers that, are going to help you in your writing endeavor. And I hope that, if you know somebody else who enjoys, this genre, share this video, spread the word, y'all. We gotta, sharing is caring. Word of mouth is the best form of advertisement out there. Just keep that in mind.
Okay.
All right. Anything else you want to tell our audience real quick before we go?
No, thank you. Thank you for the questions. I appreciate it.
All right, y'all. Well, thank you for watching us, and we will see you on the next episode of Writers with Purpose. Y'all have a great day, a great evening, great weekend, great year. Bye-bye, everybody.